All right, number one, you're going to hear some commonalities here between what Alan says and the Buffalo Focus, which you're going to see here in a minute. Okay? And first of all, be aware of what's happening around you. I always tell people, and you heard me say this, Alan, I want my players in the big moments to be tourists, observers, not judge. They're not the judge and the jury of what's happening to them. They're the observers. They're paying attention. I had a player a long time ago tell me, try to see myself in third person. Like if you ever play video games or a NASCAR game where you're sitting behind the car instead of being in the driver's eye. That third person view can allow you to be aware of what's happening because I want you to avoid judgment. That's number two. Stop being an ass to yourself. Stop it. Nobody cares. I find that most people, when they get really hard on themselves, I was standing one or two down and I remember watching you. And I remember you turned to him and said, we're going to need this shot coming down 18. You exact words you said. Let's hit a low bullet. We're going to need this shot on 18. And you called it. I think what's important, I want the three of you guys to talk about it. You know, we hear a lot from parents who want their kids to be successful. And as soon as somebody hits a bad shot, they freak out. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Because they're trying to do so much. And what the two of you do with Davis, and what Davis bought into was simplifying process. He went to things, instead of trying to be 9-ball windows and all this, it's like, this is my go-to. Like, this is what I do, right? Like, James has got a Whataburger shirt on. You don't go to Whataburger for a steak. You go there to be there, to go get a great burger. I love it. And if Whataburger wants to sponsor me, I'm in. But you know what I mean? We simplify the process, right? So talk about that process of how you do that, because that's not easy for people to do. We think we have to have all these tools in the container, but in the heat of the moment, Davis and James are talking back, and they got to simplify. Hey, welcome back to Mental Game Live. So happy to have you here. I hope tonight is one that's full of emotion, full of getting you excited, full of probably ticking you off, because tonight's all about emotion. And is emotion good or is it emotion bad? So from tonight, I can guarantee you we're going to have a bunch of clips that you're going to see on social media. But most importantly, I hope we teach you what it's about to perform at your best. Mental Game Live is a place that we can come together and answer questions, live Q&A. Where else can you get your mental games? Live question and answer. So if you know somebody who's out there, send them a link to my YouTube right now and tell them that we're live. We're live. We're answering your questions. We're talking about some cool stuff and how it's going to actually help and improve you. So, Bash, what's going on? Hope you had a good vacation.
Hey, man. Good to be here. It was good. Always not long enough. Well, probably a little bit too long with two kids. It's just
it's going to the beach.
Parenting in a different location. Yeah.
It's a little bit different than when you went, married, no kids, right?
1,000%. But we had a good time and back in the saddle, ready to get after it tonight.
Well, good. I'm glad to have you back, and most importantly, good to have an opportunity to talk about something. Were you an emotional player?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Well, tell me what emotion was for you.
Emotion for me was a lot of, I would say, frustration that sometimes bled into anger when I thought an outcome should have gone differently than it did.
Were you more along the lines of mad at yourself or mad at an umpire?
Myself.
Okay. You couldn't get mad at an umpire because you had to talk to him for another inning, right?
Yeah, I did. The only time I really got mad at an umpire, I got ejected. So
in a college game?
Yes, college game.
Oh, you got to tell the story. What happened?
We were playing at TCU as my junior year, and we had another guy. The tempers were already pretty high. Emotion was already pretty high. We had another player ejected earlier in the game for getting into like a little scuffle at third base, and so there was like a sequence of pitches where I was behind the plate, and like they were legitimate strikes, and I mean like middle, like you couldn't place it on a tee any better, and tensions were high. Our coach Mike Bianco was in the dugout yelling and barking our pitcher threw up his hands and said, "Where is that?" And of course, I got to go out as a catcher and calm him down to try to ease that relationship between myself and the umpire. And then so I get back and I asked him. I said, "Hey, I had those pretty good. Where did you have those? I need to tell my pitcher and my coach, like, it alters how you call a game.
Pitches, yeah.
So if I'm not getting the middle ball, which is an automatic strike,
if we're not getting right down Main Street,
if we're not getting right down the middle, then
right.
I need to know what we need to do here." And he said, "Hey, man, just calm down. Keep your humor about you." I was like, "I don't even know what that means."
Keep your humor.
This is not funny.
I'm laughing my ass off right now.
And then the emotion got the best of me, and I said, "Dude, you're absolutely hosing us right now." And what he thought I said was, as is a kids show, he said, he thought I said, "You're," I don't even know if I can say it.
You're effortless. Yeah.
No, basically, no, you're hoseless, which is another way of saying.
God. Okay, yeah.
Which is I never even
don't even know what that means.
Oh, yeah, what does that even mean? And so he comes in front of me and tosses someone. Didn't know it was me at the time. So our coach is in the dugout. He thinks he's been tossed. He comes running out. Pitcher thinks he's been tossed. And I, out of all three, was like, "Okay, whatever." And then he's like, "Yeah, the catcher's thrown out." I was like, "You gotta be kidding me, dude."
And what inning was this in?
This was like the 5th inning.
Nice.
And so I had to sit. They had a visitor's locker room that was like the old metal lockers. Yeah. And had to sit in there. No TVs, nothing in there. So I just had to stare at the metal
so
lockers.
I'll tell a funny story about that is I was a very emotional player. I like to talk. I like to get jacked up. I like to run. And sometimes I would say things, and I learned to put my glove in front of my mouth. Yeah. But we were playing at Auburn one year and fighting for the SEC championship. And this umpire, the strike zone was 5 inches on the outer part of the plate, right? And I'm sitting in the dugout as a reliever, and I'm like, "Oh, man, I can't wait to get out there. This is going to be fucking –
yeah, I need to get in this game."
So good, right? And our starting left fielder gets run for saying something. And he had to sit in the bathroom in the dugout for the entire game. It was in like the 3rd inning. And he had to sit in the bathroom because they didn't have a locker room for us to go to. He had to sit in the dugout. We would open the door and just be like, "You okay? I good.
You good?"
All out in the dugout, right? I mean, he's not out in the game, and we couldn't send him out to the stands. So, emotion is so critical. We're going to talk about that tonight. The feedback that I've heard from you guys has been great, and I know we can't do this every single week just because of my travel schedule or Bash being on vacation. But I was at the PGA Championship all last week, and it's just too difficult for my schedule. So, hang with us. But make sure you're following me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the things I never thought I'd be in my life. Because what we do is we take these pieces, we break them down. So if a 1 hour show is too much for you, there's a lot of 1 minute segments with some really good info. And I had a couple pros on the range this week grab me at the PGA Championship and like, "Dude, I love what you're producing with the Mental Game Live because it's so helpful to what people can go through, and you're providing an outlet and you're providing an avenue for people." So I hope that you guys are continuing to enjoy it. I hope that you like it. We're going to continue to get better and keep improving this. And like I said, we got some good guests coming up. Summer's going to be a little sketchy with people's travel schedules, but we're going to have some good things. If you have guests that you want us to bring on, send us a note. Put us in the comments, and we'll do our best to get them. I want to know what you guys want. Bash and I sit here, my daughter Logan, we're like, "What are we going to do on Mental Game Live?" We want to make sure the feedback is working for you guys as much as it is for us. So I'll give you some thoughts on the PGA Championship here in a minute, but let's get to the good, the bad, and the ugly of this past week. So if you didn't see this, look, how can you not? If you follow the world of golf at all, you had to have seen this from PGA Championship. Let me first give you my overall impression of the PGA. Every year we go to majors, and you walk in with this, "All right, what are we going to do?" They take a golf course. How can they mess it up? And how can they make it unfair for players not to be able to play? That's good for TV. And then at the end, it goes back to normal. Oak Hill was not like that at all. Oak Hill was Fantastic. Great place. A little dry on the first day, a little too dry in the fairways, but Mother Nature fixed that by Friday and Saturday. Unfortunately, my players didn't have the best of weeks, but that happens, right? We all learn from it. But it was an absolute story with PGA professional club pro Michael Block from California, teaching pro. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, the PGA Championship, the unique part is the top 25 finishers in the PGA Club Professional Championship that happens 2 or 3 weeks prior. In fact, we had a comment that popped up here. Hey, I'm getting ready to go when we did the session with Davis Riley. Hey, I'm getting ready to go caddy out in New Mexico for the Club Professional Championship. So we had that question. But Michael Block advanced. And lo and behold, here he is on the biggest stage playing with the best players. On Saturday, he played with Justin Rose. And on Sunday, he played with Rory McIlroy. And he stole our hearts. Now, there's a couple elements. I think today I have probably read 5 posts from colleagues of mine in the mental game. How to think like Brooks Koepka. Okay, first of all, you can't. Second, you won't. And third, stop trying. There you go. But what we can all learn from Michael Block was, as a club professional, very rarely do they make cuts, and very rarely are they on the leaderboard. The reason for it is they don't do this for a living, and they're not playing under the pressure burden that these professionals are playing on a daily basis. But Michael Block brought a very unique style to him. Wasn't the longest player. He's a little bit older. He's in his late 40s. I think he's 46, teaching professional, plays a lot of golf in California, plays a lot of tournament golf, but not at this level. He just took a childlike experience into the PGA Championship. That's something we can all learn from. He faced each objective. He played the best shot. And even better, on Friday, on hole 5, he cold shanked a shot. When he was on the leaderboard, front page, he shanked it so bad it hit a tree from going over a fence and kicked back, and he made a double, and he still competed, and he still played. That's brilliant. The child, like, imagine if we approached everything we did as a first-timer, as a true experience. Remember that first time you ever ate ice cream, or that new flavor, or you go to a new restaurant for the very first time and you have no expectations and you're just blown away, or that movie that you love so much that's just so good because you immersed yourself in it and you weren't playing up to some expectation or belief set that you thought it should follow. There's that childlike joyousness that Michael Block played with. And you know what? He's got game. And he's earned an exemption into the Charles Schwab Challenge this week in Colonial. So can that continue? Or can we all learn from it? You can't play like Brooks. You can't think like Brooks. But we can take the traits of what Michael Block was all about. That is not only good, that's great. And I think we can all learn from that. So if you're watching this, if you read my book, Break Free from Suckville, you know that the Suckville cycle starts with us having joy in what we're doing. The joyous experience of learning new skills and trying to figure out what we're doing. It's like riding a bike. You know, you scrape your knees a few times, you learn how to balance it. Next thing you know, you're like no hands. Then you're doing wheelies, you're jumping off of stuff, and it's fun. But all of a sudden we change and we start becoming under this job. Like, I got to do this to get that. I've got to get up and make the donuts, that type of thing. And eventually over time that wears on us and becomes a burden. It's a very good reminder to the gentleman that's in this slide, Rory McIlroy, who talked about it this week. Watch what's going to happen. I bet he has a little bit of a bounce coming out of this tournament because of having played with Michael Block. Great job, Mike. So good to see it, and wishing you all the best. Let's go to the bad. Well, the PGA Championship is a major, and everybody's on guard, and this is what sparked this whole conversation tonight. These high emotions are on display over and over and over again. And you saw players struggling, laughing, cutting, like almost with an apathy of, oh my God, it's so hard. And yet they're made the cut. They're competing against the top 150 players in the world. They're giving it everything they have, and emotions are on point. Now remember, high pressure moments impact us in 4 areas. I've said this once. I've said it 1,000 times. It impacts the way you move, impacts the way you think, impacts your processes and your decision-making, and it impacts your grit. Well, you have to study coming out of something like the PGA Championship is that it impacts you in your mental game as much as anything else. You feel this urgency to perform. You try to be perfect. Your expectations rise. You can see yourself and imagine yourself hoisting that trophy, but very few of us ever prepare for the high emotional states. Why? Because we can't replicate what that feeling is. And as the day goes on, the frustration builds and we just pop. I don't have a problem with emotional outbursts. Okay, I really don't. However, we can never disrespect the game, the maker, or anything like that. Okay, so what we have to do is make sure that we understand that our emotions are always being evaluated. And if you thought that your emotions could give an advantage to your opponent, would you actually show the negative ones? Well, what happens if that golf course is your opponent? Would you want to tip your hand that you can't handle what it gives you? If that name of that golf course was Bob, would you face it with that same level of being emotionally undisciplined? It's something to learn, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, let's go to the ugly. All right, I'm just going to say it, okay? There was a lot of rhetoric with regards to the LIV Tour about can these players actually maintain their competitive edge by not playing in cut events and they can't this and all this. Look, the LIV Tour is filled with amazing players, and they still know how to play the game. We've seen that in the first two majors between Brooks at the Masters, Phil Mickelson, Patrick Reed, and at this tournament at the PGA Championship, others sprinkled the leaderboard and Brooks winning it. You know what? We have a divide in the game of golf right now that is bigger than any of us. I just want to see the best players competing against each other. And so to me, all the rhetoric about can they do it, let's get rid of that. I hope they can resolve it one day. It's not my pay grade. I've got players on both tours. I respect the decisions, and I respect those who resent it. I see both sides. But hopefully we can get to a spot where we can see the best players competing against each other. But there is something cool about only having the players come back together for the majors. Then you get to see it. And it's cool to see people you haven't seen in a long time. We did a practice round with Cam Smith. It was awesome. And, you get out there and you see some people you haven't seen in a while. So I'm all for it. But I do think that bringing them together at majors enhances it versus the next week of going to Colonial and everybody's back in the field again. So I think that's cool. But the rhetoric about these players are the best in the world at what they do, not because of money, not because of trophies, but because of their internal personal fire, the fire they have inside of them to be the best version of themselves. That will continue. And you saw that this week. That's the good and the bad, the ugly. And soon we're going to be talking about emotions. So don't get ticked off at me. Hang with me. Make sure if you have questions that you put your questions in our comment section. If you're watching me on Instagram, you got to do it over on YouTube. And I'll be answering questions in our third segment tonight. Oh, crud. You caught me taking a sip of my drink. All right, here we go. All right, so emotion. Are emotions bad? So what's your thought on that, Bash? Are emotions bad? Come on now. What do you think?
No, they're not. Sorry, I was on mute again. Man, the mute button always gets me.
It gets you every time, man.
Every single time.
Yes. Yeah, emotions are not bad, guys. Listen, we have coached our players out of emotions for way too long. Somewhere along the lines, somebody was identified as a great player, whatever sport, and we taught them to be robots, to not allow emotions to dictate our decisions and to not allow ourselves to overflow. Emotions are emotions. They're basic cores of who we are as humans. I'm going to take you through a series of slides tonight that I hope is a really good primer on how emotions can help you. But first thing you have to understand, I love emotion. Every one of my players is emotional in their own right. If a player is not emotional, I heard this a long time ago, and I thought it was great. He's like, you've got pride and excitement, and then you got anger, right? But the difference between being high and low, everyone thinks those are polar opposites. When in reality, being angry is much closer to being great. The worst thing to have is apathy. So Bash, pull that slide up. That's a good reminder. So we're going to go through some slides. I want you to understand that within the realm of emotional management, within the realm of emotional performance, you have a continuum. It goes across a line. And I want us to be connected to our emotions. That's the blue right in the middle. And if you're a parent, if you're a coach, if you're a player, I want you to listen to this. Connected is when our emotions are congruent with our intentions. Have you ever had a moment where you're a little ticked off and you're like, I'm going to drill this. I've got this. I'm going to hit this perfect shot. Somebody would step in the box against me and I'm like, you're going down. That was very connected emotions to me. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm driven. I'm focused. I'm hyper-focused. I'm ready to go. The right side of this continuum is kind of, there's some good, and then it gets too much. And the left side of this continuum is there's some good, then it gets too much. So what I want you to understand is that emotions run in the continuum. Our job is to bring them back one bar. Not to look at it as, oh my God, I'm so stressed out I can't play, as a negative, or I'm so angry I want to blow something up, right? As a negative. If I can get somebody who's explosive and get them back to soft, angry to somewhat frustrated, I'm better off. Okay? If I can get somebody who's super stressed and move them just to being amped up or nervous, I'm okay. But the whole goal is to get into the center, which is connected. And so when we look at it, there's an old psychological thing. If you ever took Psych 101 at any school in the world, I can guarantee you've studied this thing called the Yerkes-Dodson law. What this says is that there's a optimum place of having the appropriate arousal called stress. Okay? And stress, let's think about it as arousal. Now remember, okay, adrenaline, the neurochemical of our body that gets us locked in. Adrenaline, right? It's also anxiety when it doesn't feel good. So it's the difference between being able to zone in on a certain target or being scanning everything because we have to fight, run, compete, whatever. Very fine. Well, that level of arousal is important. So when somebody lost me, somebody said, lost me, dude. So the arousal that we have is adrenaline. Okay. Neurochemical in our brain is getting us locked in to do something. It's either to fight, flight, compete. Okay. It's one of those three. Okay. We have to have the right amount in order to play our best. Yerkes-Dodson says that there's an optimal spot. Now, here's the interesting thing. That is unique to each person. That is as connected to our personality as our fingerprint. It's not, I can't tell Bash how to think when he would go up to the plate. I can't tell a player to get hype. I can't tell a player of mine who will drop an F-bomb and will whatever out there. Right? I always laugh when a player, when fans get mad at that and then they get in their car and they're cussing everybody who cuts them off. Right? It's like 100%, man. Listen, these people are in the biggest moment. They're in the blender of competition chaos. They're giving it everything they got. They need a certain amount of arousal to be able to focus because that adrenaline helps you see things clearer, lock in on targets, move the body the right way, and do all those things. And at the same time, we can have too much of that. Okay? That's the right side of that original slide I showed you. That was too purple. We can get too stressed, too amped up, too hyped up. Like a kid on Christmas morning that gets themselves worn out and can't even enjoy any of the things that they're doing because they're so amped up, they're so hyper, they get nervous, they get stressed. Okay? If they have a dog, they pee on the carpet, right? They just get so excited. But on the other side of that is that sometimes that high level of optimum arousal that we need, like sometimes that we're in that, amped up period because we don't want to be in the green. We don't want to be too laid back and be like, Yo, bro, what's up, man? It doesn't work. For some people, it does. But those people who act like that, they've got enough underneath them. Okay. But that far left side of that other slide about the being amped up, being angry, sometimes little paper cuts start building up, and we start getting more and more frustrated, and we start getting more critical of ourselves. And then the next thing you know, we become angrier, and we lose the grind of being in the mud a little bit. Now, next thing you know, we're explosive. And I'm gonna tell you, I've done it. I've done it as a player. I've thrown clubs as a player. I've broken clubs as a player. I've punched cinder block walls. Why? Because most people who are over there on that far, they care. So when I look at this, I don't see it as bad. When I've got a player out there, and I had a coach a couple years ago. It was last year at the U.S. Open. Pulled me aside and said, "Hey, our player's really, angry out there, and you need to stop it." And I said, "Well, what's happening?" He said, "Well, he's blaming his caddy for everything. He's yelling and screaming out there." And I said, "Let me ask you a question." I said, "Do you want a player in the heat of the moment that gets so amped up, but then blames themselves for everything, thinks they suck and can't do it? Or do you want a player who's mad at the bad bounces they're getting, mad at the play call, mad at the weather, whatever, but then comes back later and works their tail off in practice because they take full responsibility?" In the heat of the moment, I don't want them to take any blame, because I don't want a pilot, I don't want a surgeon, I don't want a firefighter, I don't want a chef that's like, "Oh, I suck at this." But I want them to go back later and reevaluate and be critical of themselves. Too many times when we're coaching an emotion out, what we're doing is telling the person, "Don't be emotional right now. Calm down, resist it, don't allow it in there." And then the players take on all the pressure on themselves, and they think they're wrong. So I'm okay with grinding and frustrated. I'm okay with amped and hyper. What we have to do is just keep us back in the realm of normal. Okay? And that normal is trying to get us back to connected and amped. Now, emotions are not bad. Okay? So let's go to Bash. Let's go to the slide that is emotional discipline, undisciplined. Okay? What happens is when our emotion gets in a spot where we lose the discipline to make the right decision. There's an old statement that I love. Never allow your results to dictate your state of mind. Only allow your state of mind to dictate your results. Now, let me reset that. You're driving down the road, and all of a sudden, somebody cuts you off. Do you get angry? Sure. Do you get scared? 100% maybe. Heart, get this blood. You ever have that feeling of like, ooh, a little jittery, a little sick to your stomach when like a deer runs out in front of you and they just miss it? Well, that's adrenaline. Okay. The question is, what's the next decision? When we allow our emotions to dictate our next decision, we lose our emotional discipline. What happens is those events are usually patterning on to another, and we start chasing harder and harder and harder. The best description is if you've ever tried to walk uphill on ice. The faster your legs go, the worse it gets. Okay? Now, what happens is those decisions become preventative, protective, trying not to make a mistake versus, wait a minute, how do I navigate myself out of this? I learned a lesson a long time ago snow skiing. When you fall, take it easy for a little bit. Because what happens is you fall, you want to hurry up and get back up there. If you hit a bad shot, you want to hurry up and hit a great shot. If you, whatever, okay? If somebody cuts you off, you want to, that's what road rage happens. People want to hurry up and make it right. They want to, rectify the problem. It's like getting feedback from a coach. Your emotions get up. I got to tell them I got it. I know what I'm doing. Slow your roll. A lot of times these decisions and our emotional undiscipline gets influenced by our self-image. Because if you truly believed in yourself, you had high faith in who you were, you wouldn't need it to be perfect or easy because you can handle it. Okay? Now, what I want us to be is emotionally flexible. Emotional flexibility is the key. Okay? Emotional flexibility is that your events do not create your state of mind, but your state of mind influence the next event. You're clear in your decision, and you're not allowing your increased emotion to dictate that. You're going through your process. You're allowing emotions to come and go, but you're resetting and refocusing. And the next moment happens without enhanced carryover. And by doing that, you can ask yourself a simple question. What's the objective of the next opportunity? That's all it is. Where we get in trouble is when we lose our emotional discipline. Now, let's go back to this idea about personality and fingerprint, because this is going to help people understand how it helps. So, Bash, let's pull up that slide on competitive personalities. If you read Break Free from Suckville, one of the things that you understood is I broke down these 5 different personalities. And this is based on the different people that I've been around in my life. And I kind of categorized it. And I found it to be pretty dang predictive. Okay. Number 1 is the amp up. Now, this was me. I had to get amped up. I had to get dialed in. I had to be aware of what I was doing. I had to be in that clear state of mind in order to know what I was trying to feel. Okay. I had to raise my level of adrenaline to quiet down my doubts. So it's kind of like I had to overtalk somebody else when I was in the heat of the moment. I struggled as a starting pitcher because I couldn't do it. I struggled with that in golf, trying to go 18 holes and trying to play perfect and all those other things. Okay. But if you're an amped up person, what you need to do is realize my personality works by getting my heart rate up, getting excited, having goals, having purpose, trying to compete for something. Let's go. Come on. Here's my challenge today. Let's go get it. Okay. That's awesome. Set small sub goals and allow emotion to flow. But like, what's our goal? What's our purpose? What are we trying to do? Okay. If you got to feel like the world's against you, do it. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Number 2 is the tactician. This is somebody who can take the tactical approach to anything. The noise gets loud and they're very clear on the X, the Y, and the Z. They're going to do their job without any influence. They revel in being so process-oriented that the noise around them just goes away. It all comes down to what can I do in this moment to do my job? Doesn't mean they're calm. They may be boiling on the inside. They may be frustrated or excited, but they're focused on the things that matter. And I had an NFL lineman who told me, all I do in the biggest moments is I focus on my hand placement. That's being tactical. Number 3 is the chameleon. They can be anything and anywhere. They can be amped. They can be quiet. They can be excited. They can be stressed. They can be whatever they need to be because they're going to execute their game plan. They don't need to feel a certain way. They can be around anybody. If the team is amped up, they can get amped up. If the team is quiet, they'll be quiet. They're not trying to, all they want to do is get in their own little bubble. And those people, they're dangerous because they'll merge in with anybody and they can always find their pathway through. Number 4 is the worrier. I had a very dear friend of mine that would get so sick to his stomach before every game, and he would physically get ill. And we'd all have to listen to him talk and worry about this or that. And then come game time, he was completely fine. And then we were stuck dealing with all of his BS, right? The fact was he was a worrier, so he just verbalized everything. That energy, those emotions had to come out by worrying. You ever had somebody in a school test like, oh my God, did you know this? Did you know this? Did you know this? Okay. And yes, Teresa, this is in my book, Break Free from Suckville. Last is the let go, let God person. And what I mean is we're just going to do my best. We're going to let it go where it goes. And, you know, you can call him a surfer dude. You can call him whatever. Any of those other things. And the truth of the matter is those individuals, they just flow. Okay. I did the best I could. The outcome is out of my control. And we're just going to figure it out. That's the best way to look at it. Okay. And so if you can understand these differences, you can be successful. Your different personalities, because at the end of the day, what I talk about emotion is, do we want to use emotion or do we want emotion to use us? And the way we do that is we get laser focused. Okay. And to be laser focused, what we have to understand is, you have that slide up there, Bash? That banner, the laser. There it is. Okay. Boom, boom. Okay. How to be emotional but flexible is number 1. Let's be laser focused, because then we're going to talk about the funnel of focus. To be laser. We're going to let emotion flow. No restrictions. Now understand, coaches, parents, everybody. That doesn't mean that we're going to disrespect the game. Doesn't mean we're going to disrespect our opponent. I don't really have a problem with Basham being thrown out of a game. Umpire misunderstood it. If he was doing a better job, his ears would have been clean. Okay? The truth of the matter, is that truth? Yeah, truth.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. So the fact is, we're going to let emotion flow. We're not going to try to put it in a bottle. Instead, we're going to learn our outlets for it. So if you're competing, sometimes when your emotion is high, slow down, retie your shoes. Baseball pitchers do it all the time. They go behind the mound and they retie their shoes. They walk around, they rub the ball up a little bit, whatever. In basketball, you can call a timeout. Baseball, the pitching coach will go to the mound. In golf, it's hard. So one of the things I use is to let emotion flow. Take your hat off. Walk with your hat off. Take it off. Let the emotion come out of the top of your head. Let it work. Let it blow out. Let it like a geyser. Just when you put your hat back on, we're back in the game. Okay? So we're going to let emotion flow, but we're not going to disrespect anybody, and we're sure as heck not going to disrespect the game. But if you got to let it out a little bit, that's okay. So number 2 is we're going to have a clear awareness of what we're feeling in the moment. If I'm angry and upset, I have to think. Probably have a little bit more energy. I have to trust something I've got built into my game. I have to try to grind through the next shot in the process. I have to be very aware of what I'm feeling. Don't see it as being a criminal. Don't look at it negatively. Just be aware. I'm ticked off. Or you know what? I'm really excited right now. Really excited. You see it in baseball all the time. A pitcher comes in relief, gets the first 2 outs, is amped up, and the next thing you know is they walk the next hitter on 4 pitches. Happens all the time. How many times do you see that, Bash? Probably all the time. Okay? So you have to be aware of that awareness of what you're feeling without judgment. Because then we want to develop a strategy of what we want to do. What is the objective? Is the objective to calm down? Is the objective to let go of the emotion? Or is the objective to play the next play? Run the next play. And we're going to develop an execution game plan. We're going to compete without fear. We're going to compete with full intention, no prevention. We're going to let it rip and we're going to go. And then the result's going to happen. And the result's either going to be positive or negative. But be careful. Do not become so undisciplined in your emotion that you need your result to be positive. Instead, make your emotion work with you. If you're a little bit more adrenaline and you're an amp up person, all right, the world's thinking against me. Let's go. Come on, it's me against the world. If you're a tactician, let's boil it down to what I need to do. If you're a bubble, hey, let's be where my feet are. If the worrier, what's the worst that's going to happen? And let go, let God. Hey, I've done everything I can and let's compete. Because being laser focused is about getting in the right funnel of focus. But too many times we allow the negative emotions to put us into that red one. The red one is negative. What happens is we have emotions that are high. Can you pull up that one slide there? Back there it is. Look at you. So good. Okay. We pull up that negative emotion. We don't like it. We're criminalizing. We're saying it's wrong. And now we're trying to resist it. We're trying to suppress it. We're miserable. We try to create a strategy, and that strategy is how to get out of trouble. And then what happens is when we get over the ball, we get into the free throw line, we have 14 thoughts flooding our mind, and we suck. But if you could be good at this and work the laser approach, letting that emotion flow to get into your funnel of focus, now we can flip to the blue one. And the blue one is where we allow it to be wide open at front. I'm aware, hey, I am ticked off right now. Or I am nervous as all get out. I am stressed. Like, I love it when a player says, I am so stressed. I am so stressed. Okay, cool. What's our strategy? Okay. And when you understand your personality, okay, and I want you to understand this. A lot of people ask me, Jack asked me this, can you be more than one? The reality is there's one primary driver. Okay. And so the primary driver is the one that works the best for you to get you into that funnel. If you and rely on it. When it is hitting the fan or you're amped up and excited, awareness, hey, this is what I am. Strategy, what do I want to do? What's my one clear objective? I'm going to see it or verbalize it, and then I'm going to go to execution results. Listen, there ain't nothing wrong with emotion. Okay, so Tom L. My kid was amped up after -3 after first 4 holes today, and then real bad for a few holes. Yeah, because that amped up, got his adrenaline up, got him moving faster, quicker, and he probably thought, oh, I'm 3 under. I'm going to win this tournament, and got ahead of himself. That's the problem with emotion. So I'd rather him to do say, hey, I got my heart rate up. I have not felt these feels in a while. Okay, just accept this. All right, now it's going to get hard. That's how I want us to manage that. That's why emotions are not bad. They're great because probably he used those emotions to get to 3 under. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to take your question and answers. All right, so Bash, let's talk about some emotion here for a minute. If you could go back and better understand emotion as a player, what would be the one thing that you would look at and how to incorporate into your game more effectively?
I would say, first of all, that it's not bad. I mean, you mentioned that several times, because I was always told that showing emotion was always a negative, and it means I wasn't in control of myself or my performance. Mm-hmm. So if I showed emotion, and then what ended up happening is I tried to suppress that emotion and ended up bottling up until one time, and it just explodes. Yeah. That's when you tomahawk your helmet against the wall, or you throw a bat or something like that. And so if I could go back and say it's okay to – I wish I knew about the anchor a long time ago, get some of the frustration out or whatever, but then also refocus back into the next.
So let's remind people what an anchor is, right? So if the ground is shaking on you and you get high wind, we want to grab onto something that keeps us grounded. And an anchor is something that we do personally or physically that allows us to do that. It may be learning a certain skill of counting to 3. It could be, going back, and I used to write notes on the inside of my hat. And so I would, pull it down. I'd look at it. It's like, hey, refocus right here. It is what it is. It could be reciting a prayer. It could be pulling on your glove. It could be wiping your face down if you're a golfer or taking a sip of water. Something that allows you to anchor. And tennis players have done this for years. They go to a corner of the court, they touch it with their foot, and they come back. In other words, they reset, they refocus. So I would agree. Could you pick, your coach was very emotional as a player. I don't know if you knew that.
That's what I hear.
Oh, yeah. So he played a couple years ahead of me for our fans that are listening. And he was fiery, and that's what was needed on those teams. And as a coach, he's pretty stoic, right? I see him as he's like the CEO. Mm-hmm. But the thing that we all loved about him was he was fiery. Our coach was very fiery, and he never outcoached emotion. Mm-hmm. Okay, he never coached it out of us. He let us get mad. He allowed us to chirp. He allowed us to talk. He allowed us to yell and scream at each other. He didn't care if we had fights in the locker room, because he felt that it would always manage itself out. He wanted that emotion. He wanted players to play with a passion because they cared. And I look at football teams, right? They come out of the tunnel and they're yelling and jumping up and down, and then everyone's telling them to calm down. It's like you just got there so amped up. We got them so into a fevered pitch. Now we're telling them to calm down. I think we have to be really careful and teach players that emotion is good. It's how we use emotion that becomes great. If you could think about an analog in sport is baseball. Who were the players that you looked up to in the game? And were they emotional? Were they fiery? What were they? Who were your idols growing up?
Ooh. I would say growing up would probably be right when, as a catcher, Yadier Molina was like, that was in his prime with the Cardinals, and you just wanted to emulate. And even Mike Matheny before that, when Mike Matheny was with the Cardinals as a catcher, just those two players I
were they
loved
emotional?
watching.
I know Yadier Molina being from Puerto Rico, I believe, right? Is he Puerto Rico or Dominican?
I believe Dominican.
I think he's from Dominican.
I'm not sure. Yeah, somewhere in the Caribbean. But I looked at him and how much in control he was of himself and in the game. I looked at another Ken Griffey Jr. was always a personal favorite just because I loved how
what was his
much
nickname?
fun the kid.
The kid. He played the game like the kid that showed up.
Yeah, backwards.
He had emotion. He had emotion, didn't he?
He sure did. Backwards hat, fun loving, but yeah. So I mean, those were the guys that I looked up to and saw. There were fist pumps and there was demonstrative actions on the field, and there was.
So what do you think about today in the game with people with the, increased emotion that you see in baseball? The fist, the this guy hits a bomb and he's bat flipping and things like that. Are you good with that?
I am, in the sense of it is so hard to hit major league pitching, and on the flip side, it is so hard to get guys out. I mean, this is the best of the best, and so if you get the best of somebody, there should be some celebration there. Now, to the extent at which I believe there needs to be some sort of cap.
But don't you think the game polices itself?
I do.
And that's why I love it. If I strike you out, then I'm going to show you. Okay. Yeah. But all that means is I got to be better the next time you come up then, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. See, that's the thing about emotion. And that's why I cannot stand when I hear people say, Brooks Koepka, think like Brooks Koepka, or, hey, be like Dustin Johnson. Well, what about John Rahm? What about Scotty Scheffler? What about Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer? What about Aroldis Chapman? What about Jimmy Butler in the NBA? What about all these guys? Like Ray Lewis, my God. I mean, Ray Lewis was Deion Sanders. I mean, Tiger Woods. Why are we coaching emotion out of people? It just blows my mind. Be you, match your personality, don't disrespect the game, and funnel that emotion to becoming great. That's it. Stop coaching emotion out of players. There you go. That's my public service announcement for tonight.
Well, on that note, though, did you ever see anything from? Let's just take Tiger for example. Was there ever a time where you thought emotion got him into trouble or on the golf course?
The thing about Tiger is Tiger was trained from such a young age to be able to cycle that. I think we could probably look back at a place here or there where players do get lost a little bit. But what's so funny is that sometimes the biggest emotions don't happen in the biggest moments. They happen at a place just outside the biggest moments, and then we see them get there. So I think sometimes we never saw the emotion miss. We only glorify the times it helped. I know it like at Alabama, like if a player gets in a fight at a practice, and I've been out there and watched fights happen, I'd get in a fight too if it was 93 degrees. I'm wearing, that's why I didn't play football. You practice for 6 days to be maybe in a half of a game. But I have to see players because we don't want them to lose their emotion to cost us a 15-yard penalty. So we want them right on that brink, but not. It's kind of like, finding elite operators or special warfare operators or Delta Force, whatever. You want them just at that point of aggression, but you don't want them to go out there wanting to hunt and kill everything that's out there. We want them to be tactical, but we don't want them to be reckless. So that's the fine line between being on that chart of like, we don't want to go to reckless. We want to stay just shy of it. So somebody like Tiger, players have an increased adrenaline that hits in tournaments. Guys throw harder in games. They run a little bit faster. They hit a little harder. They jump a little higher. All those are good. So we want to take the good and the bad. That's why I just do not want us to villainize that flow of emotion that happens in those situations.
Love it.
Let's go to some questions tonight. What do you think?
Let's go to Jason on YouTube. What are your thoughts on scoreboard watching in golf?
Hey, look, golf's the only sport where we villainize the scoreboard. Okay. Why? Because it does change people and they start trying to protect. When you're at a baseball game, every pitch is up on that board. Okay. When you're playing football, there's usually a big one up in the middle of the thing. I mean, look, Cowboy Stadium has the biggest ones in the world. SoFi Stadium, all these other things. The question is that you have to go back to something that Coach Saban said a long time ago. Don't allow the results. Don't allow an outcome. Don't let a status impact your focus on the next play. That's following the trust in the process. What happens in golf is we abandon that and we try to start holding on. If you ask players going into a final round that if you could start 2 back from the leader and then finish the tournament 1 back, but not really have a chance to win, but you didn't screw up, or you would have to take the risk of you could possibly win, but you could possibly also come in 30th because you collapse. 95% of players would honestly take that first scenario. They don't like the volatility that comes with it. So what happens is the scoreboard reinforces the volatility. And what I want us to do is to look at the scoreboard and go, good, playing good. Okay, what's our next shot? And go ahead and reset and refocus versus seeing it like, don't look. Now, when Billy won the Memorial last year, he said, I knew I had a 5-shot lead starting the day. I knew nobody was going to catch me. So I just did my job. I wanted to shoot even par. I didn't have to shoot 5 under. And he did, and he won by 5. Okay, so it's knowing those processes of knowing where you are is critical. Okay, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Andy on YouTube says, how can you consciously bring the childlike enthusiasm to your Sunday game?
Well, imagine if you went out to that Sunday game and said, I have no idea how today's going to go, but I'm going to be fully immersed in every shot I hit. I'm going to enjoy the shots I hit. I'm going to hit golf shots versus hitting golf swings that validate ball flight. You may actually play better. Look at how many good opportunities you can create. Okay.
Let's go to Tom, north of the border.
North of the border.
It is good to play with emotion, but how do you not let emotion play you?
Well, and that's what we've talked about.
That, but,
decision making, right? So, Tom, I can guess being north of the border. I drove by Tim Hortons every day when I was up in Rochester. I didn't get a chance to stop. I was told that it's a rite of passage for Canadians, but it's a fancy Dunkin' Donuts. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe. But the fact is, it's kind of like in hockey. We want to play with emotion. We want to use it. We want to empty the tank every once in a while. There's a little bit of a scrap, a little bit of a fight, but we don't want to go with a high sticking. Got to keep it close.
This is from Michael on YouTube, kind of going back to I believe it was the Yerkes Dodson, kind of the optimum performance level of motion. Do we need optimum stress before we have fatigue?
Oh, that's a good question. I look at stress as any demand placed upon us, right? If it's not too hard and it's way too easy, we're not going to have the arousal to succeed with it. There's got to be a certain level of challenge and that we have to reach above ourselves in order to get there. So yeah, we need to have a certain level of challenge. If it's too easy, we just won't do it.
Let's go to Rachel on YouTube. Starting out my tournament season, still working on starting to groove new swing changes. Any tips to make the best out of the experience?
Whenever you're in between swings or you're trying to inlay some new swing feel, it's challenging because we want to hurry up and see results, right? And it's so hard to plant the crops and not see the fruit for a while, right? But we do that in farming. And we have to trust that all those seeds are eventually going to produce a series of crops. We have to fertilize them. Unfortunately, the best fertilizer is cow manure. So you have to push through a lot of crap in order for that crop to push through, okay? So the only way through it is to get more and more reps, more and more experiences, and more unique and different scenarios. So the best way to do it is I'm venturing out with my opportunities. Here we go. Here we go. I'm going to commit and trust my process. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability and not be looking for help or hope or any of that.
Also, Tom said Tim Horton was a great NHL defenseman.
That's what I heard.
So, thank you, Tom.
My question would be, Tom, if he played for the Toronto Maple Leafs, then he probably there hasn't been a Stanley Cup there in like 70 years, right? So he may have been great. So I don't know. You have to give us some update, Tom. Give us some update.
Jason on YouTube says, my son just finished his sophomore season in high school golf, was all district and all state, starting the recruiting process now. Really wants to play D1, probably better suited for D2. Best way to talk to him about that.
So I learned a long time ago from somebody in the golf recruiting rank thing is to look at rankings and then see where ranking bands happen. If you want to work your way up in the rankings, great. And then that's where you're going to end up. But the other thing too is in today's game with the transfer portal, go wherever you can get experience. Go where you can get coaching and support to get better. You start at D2, move to D1. Start at D1, don't like it, go to D2. Players are in control now. So how do you have that conversation is like, what are you willing to do to get to the level you want to go at? Knowing you're not in control. And the thing about golf, it's a worldwide sport. So they recruit from worldwide settings. So all you can do is find the best place that you can go that gives you the best chance to succeed.
Mark on YouTube says, one of my swinging faults during high pressure moments is my lower body just stopping, causing fat shots. Do I visualize someone like John Rahm hitting the shot?
You could do that. I mean, I think that's a positive inlay, okay? And we do mirror those movement patterns. I think I would look at is what's the action that instead of not hitting it fat that you want to feel under pressure. So it might be keeping your head up, keeping your head still, not dipping, not casting the club, something like that. So what's the intention that you want to do? What John does real well is obviously the way his body moves, but your body probably doesn't move like that. You probably don't have a club foot. Like John, has been very documented and talking about. So I think you have to understand what it is that you do instead of preventing a fat shot, trying to hit the shot that you want to hit. Have we gotten a feedback from Tom yet?
Yeah, he said he played for the Leafs and the Sabres, was on the Leafs' last cup winning team in
67. All right. So 57 years ago. Okay,
Yeah,
there it is. All right. So I guess that does make him a legend.
Oh, man. I got to refocus here. Cooper on YouTube. What should my mindset be heading into a fun Ryder Cup format tournament, but still want to play well?
So if you don't play well, can you have fun? Or do you have to have fun in order to play well? That'd be the question I'd ask. If I'm going into a Ryder Cup weekend, I'm going to immerse myself into it. And I'm going to truck every single player I play against. That's fun for me. I want to get the competition juices going. I'm leaving to go on a golf trip Wednesday. And it's not a Ryder Cup, but it's 3 rounds of golf, highly competitive. We're going to get after it. I just want to beat them. I'm not going to measure it about how I play. I'm going to measure it by can I beat them. That's what I want to look forward to.
Josh on YouTube says, how do you stay focused in a round when dealing with slow play and lots of time between shots?
I don't know if this is the Josh that played shortstop at LSU, but if you're not, you got a cool name with like a shortstop that played at LSU after me. Slow play is tough because it only punishes the people that are victims to people who are slow. Okay. It doesn't punish the slow player. One of the things that I can't stand is I've noticed as players get better on tour, they get slower. You know why? Because they can, because nobody will punish them. It should be policed by the players, and it's a simple thing. Put that 40-second shot clock working on the standard bearer right behind them. And if it doesn't, then all of a sudden the players know about it. They put them on the clock. Come on. You don't need that long to hit a shot. Okay? But the problem is, instead of being a victim to it, well, if I know that Bash is a slow player, which he's not, but if I know that he's a slow player, then what I'm going to do is not start my personal start clock, my anchoring thoughts, until after he's done and I'm ready. I'll stay back. I'll work in my book. I'll eat something. I'll talk to somebody else. I'll stay away from the ball. I'm not starting my clock until I get there, and I'm not going to give them the power to control me. That's what it comes down to.
I don't even take practice swings.
That
Just go up and hit the ball.
Doesn't surprise me.
Teresa says, do you think there's a certain personality type that is better suited for golf? And is there a dominating personality type on the PGA Tour?
That's the thing is I don't think there's a perfect personality. I think it's whichever works for you. You know, we have people out there who are very fun-loving, and then we have people who bite and eat steel. We got people who put their heart and soul into it every time, and they get amped up. And then other people are just out there enjoying it and trying to be the best of their craft. No, I don't think there's a dominating one. I don't think there's a purposeful one. I think we make the assumption that like the NFL has a bunch of amped up people, but that's a wrong assumption. I think we think a lot of people in baseball are amped up. That's really not the case. You probably play with guys that were very chameleon. You probably played with guys, Bash, that were very tactical. You know, they just took care of their business the way they did it.
And last one from Danbo on YouTube. How do you regain your focus after a distraction from a playing partner when you're over a shot?
The old talking in the backswing, the golf cart moving, right? And the thing is, you know, the way I look at it is we can't control those things. We can't control who's sitting at us. We can't control if we got somebody with bad eating habits at a restaurant next to us. And the more mad we get about it, the more we focus on it. All right. So the best thing to do is just realize that you're playing with somebody who can be very distracting, and you have to be better. Use it as a way to improve, not a way to get mad at them, because more likely they don't realize what they're doing is wrong.
That's all we got.
That's all we got. All right, when's our next mental game live?
Let's pull it up. I got that for you. This Sunday.
Okay. The guest that I was trying to get for tonight, because it is Mental Health Awareness Month, could not do it. I think I've got him confirmed for the 28th. But as soon as I get the final confirmation on that, you guys will be well aware of it. But it'll be worth your time and attention. Tell the world, tell everybody about it. I think it'll be great. So, Bash, welcome back from vacation.
Thanks, man. I will say, if you get this guest, it is 1,000,000% worth you tuning in on Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, it is.
1,000,000%.
It will. It'll elicit a little bit of your red, white, and blue.
I think we need to stop right there.
Exactly. We'll see you guys next week.